Welcome to the program today. Mondo Gonzalez here in studio with Vicki Joy Anderson, and we're going to be talking about a subject which I think is very fascinating and not often discussed, and that is the topic of sleep paralysis. Vicki, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Mondo.
Now, this book, it's called They Only Come Out at Night, Exposing the Dark Weapon of Sleep Paralysis. And, here at Prophecy Watchers, we like to think in terms of talking about subjects that are often, people might call them fringe, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. As a pastor, this wouldn't be something I wouldn't necessarily preach on a Sunday morning, but would I talk about it in a Sunday school class or a small group or try to inform and educate? Absolutely. So let's talk about this for a minute. The idea of sleep paralysis, okay? What's the definition?
Well, the definition that you're going to get online, if you go to Wikipedia for your information, is that it is a form of narcolepsy. It's a deep brain glitch. It is some sort of a sleep disorder. You'll get words like disorder, disease, delusion, and it's very much sort of thrown under the radar. They don't really want to acknowledge that there's anything spiritual or supernatural going on. They very much want to keep that demystified.
It's interesting because one of the things I was telling Vicki about this in the beginning is right at the front of the book is, as Christians, we often might minimize or even demystify the spiritual elements of the Bible. And you have here right at the front this passage from Acts 26:16 through 18, which I'd like to read. And this is Paul giving his testimony to, I think it was Felix, in Acts 26. But he says, he's sharing what Jesus said to him at the time that he got confronted by Jesus in Acts chapter 9. So you kind of see this recurring. But listen to Jesus' words here. He says, "But get up and stand on your feet. For this purpose I have appeared to you, to appoint you as a servant and a witness, not only to the things in which you have seen in me, but also to the things in which I will appear to you, rescuing you," Paul, "from the Jewish people and from the Gentiles to whom I am sending you." Now, I have this underlined because I like verbs, I like looking at things. This is Paul's new mission that Jesus gave him, to open the eyes of the Gentiles so that they may turn from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and an inheritance among those who have been sanctified by faith in me. Now, I have it underlined here, from the power of Satan to God. Let's talk about that for a minute, because I think too often, even as Christians, we minimize the supernatural nature of the Bible. And you're addressing a topic here that truly comes under something that is very serious. Now, from the power of Satan to God, does Satan have real power? Do we really see that? I mean, is this just make-believe? Is it simply what you're reading on Wikipedia, that this is all, as you bring up so well in the book, delusion?
No, Satan's power is very real, and I think we can just as easily get caught in the web of it by ignoring it completely. And one of the things that I sort of prepared myself for in writing this book is that there probably will be that criticism from within the church walls. Just focus on the gospel. Let's not focus on the devil. And believe me, I don't want to give him a lot of attention either. But we are told to expose the deeds of the devil. And so for that purpose, I do think that it is important that we do occasionally focus on it. And I like that Jesus' own words is backing me up here. For this purpose, I appeared to you. And so what I would say to those people, to those critics, is I actually am preaching the gospel, because if you really read the New Testament carefully, Jesus isn't just preaching the gospel, he's preaching the gospel of the kingdom, which infers that there's two kingdoms at war, which infers that there's a cosmic war, which brings us to Ephesians 6:12, which brings us to archons and rulers and powers and authorities that are at war with us. And so part of preaching the gospel of the two kingdoms is that we are in a war with this other kingdom, and that we have to go to boot camp, and we have to learn how to put on the armor, and we also have to learn how to fire the weapons.
Maybe you're part of a church that doesn't participate in some of this stuff, or really isn't as biblically literate as they should be, but Matthew 12, Jesus very clearly says that Satan has a kingdom. And we know, again, that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, as you mentioned, Ephesians 6:12. So this stuff is real. And what we want to get to is what are some of the weapons or the tactics that the enemy uses? You know, in Ephesians 6:12, as you mentioned, our struggle is against these archons and principalities and powers, these spiritual hosts, these evil spiritual hosts of wickedness. Now, we see in the Gospels that these demonic entities came and were seeking to thwart Jesus' plan, and he just kind of flicked them away. But he also, in Luke chapter 10, he sends the disciples out, right? 2 by 2, 70 of them. Hey, I'm going to give you power over the enemy. So the enemy's power is very real. And one of the things that comes up here is one of the ways in which we've heard about demon possession or oppression. But let's talk about sleep paralysis for a moment as a tactic that the enemy really does use in seeking to harass people. So kind of give a basic introduction to what people who might not know about it, or maybe they have experienced it, and you go, hey, I know, I can tell you about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think of the verse in Daniel where it says that in the end that the enemy will seek to wear out the saints. And that is so fascinating to me, because you'd think that once the battle gets to that point where it's that heated and so much is on the line, that he would be wanting to murder the saints, or pull them away from the faith and doing, pulling everything out of his arsenal. But at that point, in the throes of the thickest part of battle, he's just trying to exhaust us. What sense does that make? And it actually makes a lot of sense. And that's where the subtitle of the book comes in, the dark weapon of sleep paralysis. It is a weapon, because what it does is it kills us at a soul level, at an emotional level, at a mental level, where we're worn out. It's kind of like in the military, when they would get these in the foxhole, where they would become so exhausted that they would become delusional, they'd become insane, and they would lose their mind. And sleep paralysis really does do that. It does wear you out on that level, because if this is happening on a regular basis, which a lot of people are reporting, it didn't just happen one time when they were a teenager. It's happening night after night after night. And what happens then is you don't go to bed at a reasonable time, your circadian rhythm is completely off, then you're tired, you're going to work tired, it's affecting your work performance, it's affecting your relationships, and it is affecting your faith. And the letters that I get from Christians who have been worn thin by this particular thing, what inevitably happens is they start concluding lies.
Oh, yeah.
God must want me to suffer. God must, not care about me. I guess God doesn't love me anymore. And these are not hypotheticals. These are actual letters I've gotten even this week. And so if the ultimate conclusion of a bunch of nightmares is turning your back on your entire worldview and your faith in God, then we can't agree with Wikipedia that this is just some sort of narcolepsy.
You know, it's interesting because one of the things that Vicki does in the book is she engages with so many of the peer-reviewed, secular places and some of the official terms and diagnoses and how they describe it, et cetera, et cetera. So this isn't just some, hey, I looked at something at Wikipedia. You did a lot of research in this, which I appreciated, because, but you're also encouraging critical thinking.
Yes.
And saying, hey, just because they say this, and no doubt, we understand that the medical profession, again, they do a lot of great things, but they also have a very secular worldview. So remember that they're not going to necessarily admit the spiritual warfare that we know, Ephesians 6 and 2 Corinthians 10, that the weapons of warfare are not carnal, that we have this real war, that there's a real battle going on. Talk a little bit here in the sense of how have you outlined each of the chapters, which I thought was very, very neat how you did it. So kind of talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, it was a very interesting journey, and the first draft, was a tome. I mean, it was massive, because there's so many rabbit holes you go down, and there's so many tentacles coming off of this monster. And so once I kind of whittled it away to get down to just the meat, let's just talk about sleep paralysis, there were a lot of kind of holes in the progression of my story. And so I had to kind of piece these things back together. And so I wanted to keep in the book the things that I thought were the main things, even if they veered a little bit off of the topic. And so I started out just like you said, teaching people to critically think, so that going forward, you don't have to remember everything in this book, but as you do your own research, remember that these are some of the things that they do to diminish the supernatural aspects of this. And then in chapter 2, I go into the history and that how in antiquity, mysticism and medicine were never separated. They were intrinsically woven together. You could not pull them apart. And we even see that in the Old and New Testament. Jesus had a physician in his entourage, Luke, but when he healed the people, he didn't say, like, have my guy, get a second opinion from my guy right here. He sent him to the temple. Go and have the high priest, because that was the Torah. That was, you went to the temple to be declared clean. And so I don't know if it's just kind of a result of the Victorian era, the scientific method, just the Greek stoicism that we are so influenced by. But at least in our culture, in America, I don't think it's this way everywhere, we have really wanted to divorce everything church and state. And that's bled into even our Christian worldview, where let's not, like I make the joke, don't get your chocolate in my peanut butter. Don't start mixing spiritualism and prayer with healing, and then the doctors are looking at the Christians like, don't involve that. And so there's this bitter divorce between science and spirituality, but because of that, we can't have discussions like this and come to any conclusions, because it doesn't make sense separate from one another. And so I went from there into talking about the theosophical elements of this, because with sleep paralysis usually comes astral projection, and it is an unwilling astral projection. These aren't people who are necessarily seeking that out. This is very much like the UFO phenomenon. These are people being abducted, but they're being pulled into the astral realm. And I believe that theosophy, which is rooted in pre-Aryan Hinduism, is the religion of the astral realm. And
let's take a break for a minute, because
Sure.
I want to come back to that and give some definitions for those that might not have any clue. But we're going to take a little break here where you can see how to get our magazine, it's a monthly magazine. You can join 20,000 other people. It's a great opportunity for you to stay up to date on the current events. And so take a listen.
Everything that we're doing at Prophecy Watchers is vital, because Bible prophecy is coming to pass right before our eyes. And it has never been more important for believers to understand what the Bible says about the days that we are living in. In case you haven't noticed, the whole world is spinning out of control, but we are not surprised, because many of the things taking place were prophesied in the Bible thousands of years ago. That's why we want to offer you a very special subscription to our magazine, The Prophecy Watcher, that will keep you on the cutting edge of Bible prophecy. Stay informed on prophetic world events. Follow the nuclear threats from Russia and Iran, China's march to world domination, the likelihood of another global pandemic, the rise of artificial intelligence and transhumanism, war in the Middle East, the UFO phenomenon, and the latest technology preparing the world for the mark of the beast. The Prophecy Watcher magazine features articles from leading prophecy experts like Gary Stearman, Mondo Gonzalez, Thomas Ice, Randall Price, L.A. Marzulli, Bill Salas, and many others. With your gift of $50 or more to support the worldwide outreach of Prophecy Watchers, you will receive 12 issues of the magazine in either print or digital format. You will also receive 10 bonus DVDs that feature in-depth teaching on the ancient book of Enoch, heaven and the New Jerusalem, the biblical case for the rapture, a look at how God put the gospel in the stars, what really happened at the Tower of Babel, and Ezekiel's prophecy on the battle of Gog and Magog. This special offer is available anywhere in the United States with free shipping included. Don't wait. Pick up the phone right now and call the toll-free number on your screen, or visit us at prophecywatchers.tv. Stand with us today and help us take the message of Christ's soon return to the whole world.
All right, welcome back. And Vicki, before you were talking about astral projection, and I want to get there, but first, I think all of us have woke up in the middle of the night, I know I have, and felt paralyzed or unable to move. And a lot of this happened a little bit more, certainly when I first became a Christian. I was like, well, this is weird. But we've all had those. So we don't want to say that every single incident like this physiological thing, is a spiritual attack. So kind of give an outline of what it is that would be maybe biological, physiological, and how it's not.
Yeah, absolutely. This is such an important distinction because this is one of the problems that we have with medicine and supernatural arguing, because you can't compartmentalize this all into just one category. And there is just a natural biological function. There are certain stages of sleep, as we get into deeper levels of sleep, where our body naturally shuts down and goes into various paralytic modes. This is for our protection. If we weren't kind of held down, so to speak, we would act out our dreams. We would fall out of bed. We would maybe kick the person we're sleeping with. We could wet the bed. Like, the functions just, they go into a deep, deep relaxation. And what's interesting about deep, deep relaxation, where then during those paralytic states you are then susceptible to these spiritual encounters, that's where you get into meditation and things like that, Eastern meditation, where there is a gateway. That deep relaxation becomes a gateway to these spiritual encounters. They become a liminal space. They become a way to cross between the terrestrial and the spiritual veils. And so that is why we have such a proliferation of meditation being pushed in workplaces and in schools and even in the Christian realm. And we know that meditation is biblical, but there's quite a difference between the biblical meditation and the Eastern meditation. But I digress. So what I think a big reason why a lot of people tend to think these people who have sleep paralysis are kind of nuts is because all of us phase in and out of that paralytic phase every night. And it's a normal thing, and many of us, we do wake up kind of prematurely if you hear a noise or something and you're kind of disoriented. And when you're in those states, it's actually very relaxing. It's a pleasant feeling. You wake up and you can hear the birds outside, and I've got an hour before I have to get up for work, and it's so relaxing. And so when we talk about sleep paralysis, what we're technically talking about are demonic visitations that can occur during sleep paralysis. Because the sleep paralysis itself, there is nothing mystical about that. And what I think it is that these entities are just capitalizing on our ignorance of our own biology, as well as just an opportune timing. Mm-hmm. They come at night when we are disoriented, we're tired, we're confused, and because the nature of sleep paralysis, where you see your bedroom, everybody assumes that they're awake because they can see their bedroom. And I don't think that's always the case. I think a lot of times you are in another astral dimension, and this is a recreation, this is an overlay of your room. And the reason I believe that is because in my own experience, this is one of the few advantages to having sleep paralysis your entire life, as I did, was that you have the opportunity in your waking hours to evaluate, ask questions, to pray, to inquire, to test spirits, and then when it happens again, you can observe, and it becomes a classroom. And so what I began to notice was there was always be one thing off in my room that would indicate that it wasn't really my room. The door would be on completely the wrong wall, or there'd be a window that didn't exist, or there'd be a headboard that didn't exist, or something like that. And they put a lot of predictive programming in our films and in our media, and that really hit home for me in the first Matrix movie, where he was in the jump space in the hotel and he saw the black cat come twice. Mm-hmm. And they talked about the glitch in the Matrix. And so I think that for whatever reason, they are recreating that. And I don't know if it's a visualization or an overlay, like over the pineal gland. They want you to believe that you're in your room, because I don't think they want you to know where you really are. And I think it's an attempt to disorient, and it's an attempt to allow people on the internet to say it's just a bad dream because you wake up and you're in your room.
Let's talk about this, because one of the things that often is and you mentioned this in the book, where some of the definitions, they use the term delusional a lot, and this idea of, hey, no need to fear, WebMD, I thought that was a good quote, no need to fear because something that's not real or something that's not there. But what we're saying is in the realm of what the Bible says, that there are, as we know, if you believe the Bible, you believe in a real spiritual war. Give a little bit of a common description of a sequence of events. What does a typical sleep paralysis event look like?
So this is the classic, and because believe me, it gets bizarre. And
I'm sure it's individualistic, right?
Very much so, very much so. The classic is you wake up in your bedroom, you cannot move. You are very aware of the fact that you cannot move, and you feel an extremely ominous, foreboding, weighty, thick presence in the room. And some people will actually see the presence that it's attached to, others will not. But even those who don't see the entity have a sense of where it is in the room. They'll tell you if it's more than one entity, or if it's just one. They'll tell you if it's giving off more of a male or a female sort of energy. And as this thing moves around the room, whether they can see it or not, they know exactly where it is. It's a very strange phenomenon. But many people will report that they feel like something's sitting on their chest. Some will actually see like an old hag or a gargoyle or a demon-looking thing. They will say that they are having trouble breathing. They feel like they're being choked. And there can be auditory hallucinations as well, and this can be footsteps and the creaking rocking chairs and all of the cliche haunted house kind of sounds. It can be voices. There's also vibrational and frequency sounds that are associated with the tearing of the soul or the light body. If you're getting dragged into the astral, there's an actual sound effect associated with that. And I can only speak for myself, but I'll tell you that whenever I would have sleep paralysis, the most terrifying aspect for me was that sound. That was like the hourglass that was getting tipped. Like you knew now you only had a few seconds to get yourself out of this, or you were no longer in control. And so the sound effects, and some people report smells, and they're usually foul odors, the smells of rotting corpses, or just something like sulfur-like. People will say sulfur, and that is what I think is interesting about the sleep paralysis experience. It's kind of like a which came first, the chicken or the egg. So many of the sights and the sounds and the smells are so cliche that in waking hours, when you try to express to someone how terrifying it is, it becomes silly because it's just like you're just talking about something that's in every single horror movie that's ever been told since the dawn of time. And so it's just another kind of way of gaslighting the victim.
You know, that's good because in the sense of you bringing that up, because you mentioned that in the book about the gaslighting, and I resonated with that in the sense of like, this is so true when you have a so-called expert or a medical doctor or somebody coming and saying, well, let me tell you what really happened.
Yes.
You know, and then you're like, oh, so I didn't experience this? Oh, no, that's just make-believe or whatever. Or maybe you're watching a movie, maybe you ate some pizza, whatever.
Yep.
What I found, one of the things that you do in the book at the end is you have, in one of the appendices is, you have stories that people had written in and just talked about their experience. And I have a feeling that there's there's a lot of you out there that have said, you know, I've experienced this, but I've been nervous about talking about it or sharing it because I don't want to be gaslighted, or I don't want to be told that I'm delusional or hallucinating. What has been, give a moment here about, you said there's a study group that you're a part of, and kind of share, I don't know, names or anything, but just kind of tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, you know, as soon as you've put yourself out there as someone who has experienced this, believes it, knows a lot about it, the people come out of the woodwork. And so for the book, I actually put shouts out. And so I was L.A. Marzulli, when he was still doing PPNS on YouTube, he did a shout out for people to submit stories. And then Tom Dunn, who is Russ Dizddar's protege, he on Through the Black, I was on that show once, and we did a shout out there as well. And so I got dozens upon dozens of stories, and I've gotten dozens more since the publication of the book. And the stories that have come out since the publication of the book have been so fascinating, because now I'm beginning to hear things that fall way outside of the realm of the classic. These are people now that feel like, okay, this is the age of disclosure. Now I can finally say this. And The most interesting aspect of the people who are coming to me now is because, you know, you always get the people, you know, you've got the demon stuff, you've got the UFO category, you've got the incubus, succubus category, but now there's this fourth category, which it seems apropos, being that we are now into the quantum physics world, and we speak in terms now on quantum levels and quantum entanglement. A lot of people, and I do mean a lot of people, are now contacting me saying that their sleep paralysis visitation is electronic. They're using the word electronic, they're using the word technology. And so when they open up their eyes and they see their room, instead of their bedroom, they're seeing their whole room outlined in green lights. Or several people have explained that what they see looks like fiber optics all over.
Almost like what you would see as they were in, again, going back to the Matrix movies.
Yes.
Where he would see the digital and the things going up and down and the programming.
Very
I want
much.
to take a little break here because where you can see it, you can get Vicki's book, which again is tremendous. It's very well done. There's a lot of research and documentation. It's very thorough. You're very good. You organized it extremely well.
Thank you.
But take a listen here.
The Bible speaks of doctrines of demons, and as we approach the end of the church age, we see the influence of the occult rising to frightening new levels. We're also seeing hints of UFO disclosure, aliens, and even motherships in our atmosphere, not to mention new ways to explore the other side, out-of-body and near-death experiences, communicating with the dead, virtual reality experiences that are all too real, astral projection, and even after-school Satan clubs. Author Vicki Joy Anderson has endured many battles with the enemy. From the age of 3, she's seen things most of us will never experience. Childhood trauma led to lifelong battles with terrifying sleep paralysis, where she was physically and mentally attacked by these dark forces. She believes that demons and fallen angels were the ones behind her nightmares. After penning this emotional book, she came to understand that she was not alone. Others have experienced these night terrors in similar ways. And through the power of the name of Jesus, she learned how to battle and conquer the enemy. Vicki's book, published by our friend L.A. Marzulli, is an eye-opening and sometimes terrifying look into the world she's experienced firsthand. It's available from Prophecy Watchers for your gift of $25 with shipping included anywhere in the USA. Call the toll-free number you see on your screen or visit our bookstore at prophecywatchers.tv. Gary Stearman often says that one of the problems in the church today is that people don't believe in a real Satan. There are dark forces that rule this fallen world. Gary, L.A. Marzulli, and Mondo Gonzalez recently completed a 3-DVD series of studies they called The Supernatural Book. They cover the unseen realm and discuss controversial subjects like UFOs, the Nephilim, the ancient seed war between Jesus and Satan, and even the mysterious cattle mutilation phenomenon. For your gift of $40 or more, we'd love to send you the Supernatural Book DVDs along with Vicki's book, They Only Come Out at Night, and we'll ship it to you for free anywhere in the USA, along with another free bonus DVD. Call the number you see on your screen and ask for the Supernatural Encounters package. It will open your eyes to the schemes of Satan and show you how to win the battle for your mind and your soul. Thanks for watching today. Until next time, keep looking up. Jesus is coming soon.
Well, we have a couple minutes now to kind of do a kind of a conclusion in the sense, because I want to do another program because we barely even got into it. But, you know, kind of each of these programs are relatively independent. So, you know, we're talking about sleep paralysis. Many of you might have experienced this, and you wonder what do I do? What is the hope here? You know, is there a magic bullet solution? Because you talk about that in there, and you got about a minute or so on this rest of this program.
The metaphor that I choose in the book is it's like a security system in your home. You can pay top dollar. You can go out and spend $1 million securing your home and have the cameras in every room and all that, and it will not deter a thief from attempting to break into your home. But what it does is it gives you advance warning, and it gives you a shot to prepare before they get into the house or into your room. And I do think, absolutely, because I've done it, and I've talked to other people who have, absolutely, you can completely rid yourself of this. And I don't want to make it sound like it depends on you, because we do have the power of the name of Jesus, and he will fight for us, and he will, through his Spirit, reveal to us the things that need to be taken care of. He's going to help us in this. And I give a prayer mapping exercise at the very end of the book where ways to just really hone in on the one question: what is the source of this? Because a lot of people, they self-diagnose. When they write to me, they say, I know this is happening because I smoked pot once, or I know this happened because I played with a Ouija board. And I'm not minimizing that those things open doors, but a lot of times the things that might have opened the door would be something we would never suspect, because they're overt. These entities, they know what they're doing. They're not going to make it that obvious. And so this prayer mapping exercise, you just go to the Lord in fasting, in prayer, with a journal, by yourself, and you pray until you get the answer to the question, what is the source of this? And then you go from there. And I do know that there's a lot of people that suffer from sleep paralysis, and I've done everything. It's kind of like the people, I've done everything to diet and lose weight, and I can't lose weight, and they're eating a candy bar in front of you, And so the sad fact is, Mondo, and this is very, very serious, if there are things that we're doing in our life that are opening doors, and we do know what they are, but we're not quite ready to let go of those things, you can call on the name of Jesus, and you can do all of these things, but there are things that we have to do to clean our own houses, and the literal house as well as this house. And so if there are things, if there's skeletons in the closet, if there's those secret sins, if there's those open doors, if those things you're dabbling with, and all the way to the level, like, are you flirting with that married woman at work? What kind of music are you listening to? Where did all of the souvenirs on your bookshelf come from? Have you prayed over this stuff? And so I've spent my entire life trying to cleanse all of this stuff out, and there's always more. And so anytime I start to be affected in my sleep again, that really, the onus is on me. It's always easy to blame it on the occult. Oh, someone's cursed me, or I have a charged object in my home. It's really nice to have a convenient way to kind of slither out of that. But it's always best, as these things are happening, not to make us the victim, but is there more I can be doing to make sure this house is clean?
Well, Vicki, appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Mondo.
And appreciate you guys watching. This is a very fascinating but real topic. As a pastor, having the opportunity to talk with, again, true born-again believers who struggle with a variety of things that are what we would call certainly spiritual warfare. And I don't think it should be minimized or ignored. And Vicki's book does a great job of outlining just the background, again, the spiritual answers, and to be thorough. You did a very good job of explaining how to be thorough and looking and again, always seeking the Lord. So appreciate you watching this week. We ask for your prayers, as always, for the ministry here. Lots going on. And these are the times. They're exciting times, and spirituality in general is increasing. And we know that it's not necessarily for the good, but yet we are watching, and so we hope you are too. We'll see you next time.